Are they all recording now?
They're all recording.
They're all recording. Great.
Do you want to do a singular clap? Great.
Are we going? Have you?
Domios Punch Bear. That's a Decathlon special, isn't it?
Yes, but
love
we've somehow
Decathlon.
broken it. Decathlon's like the best shop
I
in
love
the world.
Decathlon. Yeah,
the best shop in the world.
So good.
So
I can't drive past one without going in.
No, I've bought
Wherever I
so
am,
many
I
weights
know,
in
me
the
too.
past 6
Mate,
months.
like the amount of Decathlon gear we've got in this house, and in Spain, everybody uses it. Obviously,
There's a Decathlon every 300 yards.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because they're a French company, but France, Spain, Portugal, everybody buys everything.
But the
from
quality's
Decathlon.
good.
Yeah,
the
it's
shoes
really
are good.
good.
The sandals are good. The weights are good. And I really love that you don't have to scan anything. You just put it into the box by
That's
the tail
right.
and it scans it itself.
It's amazing. The greater.
TheGreaterManChallenge.org.
Can we just say a bit more stuff about Decathlon and try and get a sponsorship deal?
Hi everyone, welcome to this episode of the Greater Man Challenge. I'm here with Neil Smith from Mettle app.
Hi.
Neil, welcome. Thanks very much for being
Thank you,
here.
Charles. My pleasure.
Good, good,
I
good.
mean, we are in my house, so I would expect to find myself here. It's actually, I should say, welcome to you. Really.
And thank you for having us. Yeah. And thanks for the cacao this morning. Yeah,
My
we came
pleasure.
in and instead of a cup of coffee, got offered cacao and mushroom blend, which has now jacked us up. Actually, I'm feeling not on edge like I would with caffeine, but I'm definitely feeling vigour.
That's right. Does the job, huh?
Does the job, exactly,
Yeah.
yeah. So before we get on to talking about Mettle, the app,
Yeah.
was there a point in your life and your journey where you were, pushing yourself too hard and then suddenly had that sort of crisis and were like, I need to change now, I need to make changes with my life?
Well, yeah, recently. I mean, so, actually, I had a mental health journey which started for me a lot earlier, which, we should talk about. But in terms of pushing too hard, I think actually it wasn't necessarily pushing too hard, but I was in TV for many years. So I was a TV director, producer, creative director, then started running companies and ended up running a really big company where I oversaw The Apprentice and Grand Designs and Escape to the Country and Netflix shows. And I did stuff with Bear Grylls, my co-founder at Mettle, and Ed Stafford, another adventurer guy first guy to walk the Amazon. But I became kind of overwhelmed by not doing too much, but having reached the top of a mountain and realising that I had another one to climb. They call it second mountain syndrome. I don't know if you've ever heard of that. I looked up, somebody said, you've got second mountain syndrome. So basically, men, we like building stuff, creating our empires and, safety and family, whatever, buying a house and what have you, and getting to the top of our careers. And then quite often, which happened to me more through luck than design, you get to the top and you're like, oh, now I've got to do something with some purpose. So that's when I kind of thought, okay. And that became like an overwhelming sensation. Like, I've got to kind of change my life here and do something. I was 50 years old, same age as my dad died. I thought, okay, look, I don't know what my future holds. My mum died pretty young as well. Could be around for a while, could be not. I could sit here doing this for 10 years or I could, go out and do something worthwhile, which is why I started Mettle, basically.
It's interesting because I've heard it called summit syndrome.
Oh, yeah.
Now there's a second summit syndrome.
Well, yeah.
And
no, it's the first summit that gives you the syndrome. Then you've got to climb the other one.
Okay, fine.
So it's called second mountain.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, maybe you're right. Yeah, it should be first summit syndrome.
Summit syndrome.
It's the same thing.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's it's an interesting thing. I mean, to some extent, I've sort of experienced bits of that myself, and more recently with the launching of the Greater Man Challenge.
Yeah.
In the sense of not necessarily reaching the summit, because I've not built an empire by any stretch of the imagination, but I was pushing myself to do things in a direction and have achieved quite a lot. But then it got to a point when I was like, well, why? What am I? It's PR not ER, as they say in PR.
Oh yeah, what does that mean?
It's the saying is that you can sort of get really wrapped up in the importance of something you're doing that's really not that important because it doesn't have that purpose.
That's right. Yeah.
And for you with, you said let's jump back, because you said your mental health journey started a bit earlier.
Yes.
I know before we started rolling the cameras, you were talking about how, you've been 20 years ago, you were out doing, retreats in Asia 30 years ago.
Yeah.
So, it sounds like you've been on this path for quite a
Yeah.
while.
So I started at 11 years old. So, somebody said to me the other day, because, I'm a tech entrepreneur now. I used to be a TV exec. Now I'm a tech entrepreneur. I'm constantly out raising money and, or trying to. And somebody said, I only want to hear from founders who started their companies, in their heads when they were 12 years old. And I'm like, well, I was 11, so, But, I started meditating at the age of 11, so, which is very young, especially in 1983. It was not something that was widely heard of.
So who introduced you to that? Was there a moment? Or was
So basically I have a condition of the nervous system called benign intention tremor, which is like a chronic shaking condition. And by the time I was like 11 years old, I used to shake really badly. And by the time I was 11 years old, I couldn't get a teaspoon of sugar into a cup of tea. And I remember being on like a cub camp or something like that. It's just hugely embarrassing because I couldn't do it. And my uncle, it's a hereditary condition. He also has it. And he went to kind of in search of a cure and, met perhaps an enlightened doctor in Harley Street. He said, well, look, there's no treatment or cure for this condition, but there's this thing called meditation we've heard of, you might want to give it a go. Like, here's some
Look
tapes.
to the east.
Yeah, I mean, it's like an unlikely place, yeah. And it's kind of like, and so I started meditating and it completely changed my condition and my life, really. And so from that point, I was deeply interested in kind of Eastern kind of philosophy, and so I ended up, around 21, I started going to India. I've been there, probably spent about 2 years there on and off, just studying under Buddhist traditions, yogic traditions, tantric traditions. Yeah, and and I'm still shit at meditation. I've got terrible ADHD. I'm still can't meditate for longer than a few minutes at a time. But I know a lot about it. Let's put it that way. Yeah.
Oh, that's fascinating. And so, how was Mettle born out of all your life experiences and work, and how did it come to a head?
Yeah, so it's the confluence of a number of things, so it did come to a head, I guess. So it's kind of like, so I had that kind of background. Like, I used meditation a lot. I'm big into breath work. I've studied probably most of the modalities, whether that's kind of like on the yogic side or the conscious connected breath, or kind of stuff that the military use or athletes, whatever it is. I sort of had a go at it. I love it. So I had that as well as meditation. And then in my 20s I had depression quite badly, and even though I was kind of doing these things, I sort of fell out of them, and I had depression and went into quite a dark place for the best part of a decade, of which I can't remember a lot about, actually. But like a lot of men, I did not tell anybody about it. Yeah, so I just kind of suffered in silence for 10 years. And it was bad, so I was doing really well in my career, but privately I was struggling to hold down relationships and in a dark place, in a bad place. And I was eventually cured of that through clinical hypnotism. But that was the best part of a decade, as I say, which feels a bit lost to me now. More recently, I realised that there's a male mental health crisis. Biggest killer of men under 50 is suicide, not cancer or heart disease, but suicide. And you're like, wait a minute, when you stop to think about that, that's insane. And why aren't we working incredibly hard to do something about it? Yeah, it's kind of like, 'cause there's charities talking about it, but there's not much coming from the health sector. Even though arguably it's one of their, inarguably it's one of their biggest problems. So I realised that coming from TV, and this is where I guess, things come to a head. So I'd made shows like, one of the shows we made in my old company was called The Undateables. Now that was a massive hit series. So that was about taking people with disabilities on dates. Yeah. So I always say that if we'd have made a documentary about people with disabilities, that would have been great, but probably a couple 100,000 people would have watched it. Only people who are interested in people with disabilities, or potentially documentaries. Dating is the biggest TV genre in the world. So we made a dating show and happened to put disabled people in it. So that show therefore ran for 20 seasons. It sold all over the world. Netflix kind of made their version called Love on the Spectrum, made us tens of millions of pounds. Not me personally, but the company. But in doing so, it massively raised awareness around disability and the fact that we're all the same underneath, and we all want to find love. I did stuff with Ed Stafford. I did a big homeless show with him where he's a survival guy. He normally spends 60 days and 60 nights living on a desert island with nothing but a camera, and then that is literally the intro. And I'm like, Ed, you are male, adopted, suffered mental health problems, ex-military, all risk factors for ending up on the streets. Why don't we do your format? But rather than on a desert island, we'll do it on the streets of London, Manchester and Glasgow over a British winter. And he lived kind of without contact with his family for 60 days as a homeless person. And it was a massive hit for Channel 4. So I thought, okay, my passion outside of work is kind of the men's, or rather, mental fitness, meditation, breath work, etc. And then there's this male mental health crisis. When I speak to my mates about mental health, they're kind of like staring to their pints, want to know what time the football or the rugby's on or whatever, just don't talk about it. And there's some really good messaging, and it's the correct messaging that men need to talk, because the facts are incontrovertible, is that the word?
Mm-hmm. It is now.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, and Steve Whittle will talk about this, but men will often take their problems to the grave without talking about them, whereas women will communicate. So there's a big difference between men and women when it comes to kind of mental health and risks around suicide. But equally, I knew coming from TV and having lived experience, as they call it, that telling people to talk does not change behaviour. Telling people to do something. If I told, listen, everybody who loves first dates, go and watch this show about, this documentary about people with disabilities, nobody would have gone. So you've got to meet people where they're at. So I was like, okay, could I do what I've done in TV before? We meet people where they're at. So where are men? Well, they're not talking and they're on their phones. So it's like, okay, well, why don't we build an app whereby we provide mental fitness tools that we know work, so meditation, breathwork, self-hypnosis, but all built from the ground up for men, or science backed. We co-design it with Imperial College. It's NHS verified. And we just meet them where they're at. And in time, we want them to talk. So we run men's groups, and we're going to be introducing kind of, community aspects. But in the first place, we just said, look, let's just give them a first aid kit, a simple toolkit that can help them either with, preventative tools, building resilience, or help them more when they're in trouble and they're not able to reach out for help.
It's interesting. And within the app, do you bake in somehow an invitation to reach out and speak to people, or the opportunity? Because you were saying, you were suffering with depression, you were engaging with all of the stuff that was connecting with yourself, but you weren't connecting with other people around you because you were remaining silent.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, so I think that the tools that I had got me through, but I should have been talking and getting professional help. So at the moment, we have like a help page, and we tell people kind of, if you're struggling, these are the places to go. What we're building now is like an AI agent. I mean, who isn't? But that will help you kind of navigate through the content. But when you need extra help, identify it, because it's in conversation with you, or you might tell it. Identify you might need help, and then take you to kind of trusted third-party kind of clinical providers. Because it's important that if we're taking people to help, that help is first class as well. Yeah. That it's the right type of help. Yeah.
It's interesting you say that as well. I was chatting to Amelia Wrighton from Suicide & Co, who's one of our charity partners, and it's this discussion around, obviously you want people to talk, but they have to have the right people to talk to. We feel, Rami, who's behind the camera over there, we feel very lucky that we are in a community of friends and people with the resources to be able to have these conversations and to offer the support. But there are people out there who live in friendship groups and parts of society where that isn't, and they are encouraged to speak by the person over there on social media, whatever it is they do, and they're met with the friend looking into their pint glass.
Yeah.
And that can also be a concern too. So it's good that that's sort of built into the app.
Yeah, so I mean, we're running men's groups as well, which we want to kind of, accelerate, and they prove really, really successful, I would say, in supporting men, incredibly so. Yeah, and so that's something else. I mean, community, I would say, and it's probably the number one thing you can do to help men, is to provide them with a safe community where they can talk openly. And actually, I was speaking about this on a podcast I did recently, that, nowadays, I think actually communication channels, because I sometimes say, look, men's mental health isn't just a clinical problem, it's a communication problem. If men aren't communicating, then that's the problem. Yeah. But recently I was kind of talking about WhatsApp. So, we've now got WhatsApp. Apparently that means we can communicate, much more easily all the time. And a lot of men are in these kind of WhatsApp communities. But I'm in them. And quite often the only form of accessible type of communication is banter. Yeah. So you're there and you're bantering and, sharing gags or whatever it might be. But then it's really difficult to express yourself in any other way, to say, look, I'm feeling bad here. So sadly, we know of a man who took his own life while he was still bantering with his mates on WhatsApp, which is horrifically sad and very, very upsetting for his friends, obviously, because their rules of engagement were this is just a place to banter. And I think with men, you just need to kind of set up different communities, or different rules. So if you set up a WhatsApp group where you say, guys, this is the place where we support each other and we kind of talk openly about, how we're doing, then that's how men will act. The same guys who will be in the WhatsApp group, if you give them new rules of engagement, they'll work in a different way. So you can reach so many people that way if you can set up and those can be done anywhere, I think. Yeah.
And a question I have as well is I spend too much time on my telephone because the telephone is the window into work nowadays.
Yeah.
And I get very distracted looking at this and that and everything. And obviously within the context of this project, there's a lot more using Instagram and a lot more using YouTube. And whilst I'm using it, to spread the word and disseminate the information that we're creating in messages like this, I also get distracted. Obviously, telephones are designed to be like that. How do you, within the Mettle app, encourage people through the phone, to step away from the phone?
Yeah. Well, I guess we say you just do this a few minutes a day. I mean, all of our kind of content is instructional and built for men. So right at the start, I thought, okay, well, look, there's so much information out there for men now. So what we realized when we looked at this space, it was like, well, why build something for men? So let's go back to basics here, and excuse me if my ADHD loses that thread, but it's kind of like, why build something for men? Well, because there's nothing out there for them, yeah? And it's kind of like, there's a wellness space full of all these solutions, but they don't speak to men. So if men aren't entering the mental health space because of stigma or vulnerability, because it challenges their kind of perceptions of themselves as men, and I was in that place, then we need to give them something that speaks to them. And that's the whole idea of Mettle, is the first sort of mental fitness platform for men, built for them from the ground up. What we realized when we set up Mettle was that there's a lot of kind of information out there for men, but not much transformation. What I mean by that is my wife was listening to who's that guy, Huberman, said, oh yeah, I've just heard that if you eat 15 different types of vegetables, then you'll live forever or whatever, every day. And I'm like, yeah, but last week he had a guy on there saying it was intermittent fasting, yeah? And this is kind of, all right, my wife, not a man, she's a woman, but, this is kind of what men are kind of in that manosphere, I guess, the kind of, you got Huberman on one end, you got Andrew Tate on the other kind of thing. And there's a lot of information, a lot of it's overwhelming, and men, just ordinary blokes in the street, my background and my mate's background, those are the people we're trying to reach, probably don't listen to those things. And if they do, would, like me, find them a bit overwhelming and what am I supposed to do? What we wanted to do is just build some really simple tools which don't have lots of information and just transformative. So all the content we've built is kind of by the world's best coaches. So, we've literally got, Paul McKenna does the hypnosis, Chibs Okereke is the world's leading stress and burnout coach, does all the meditation, etc., Bear Grylls, and it's all science-backed, and we developed it with the former head of content at Calm. So we know it works, but we just keep it really short and sweet, which also men like, and I like, because I don't, as I say, I have ADHD, and I don't like doing things that are too long. And it's all kind of based around need states. So it's like, okay, well, if you're feeling anxious, then use this. You can either do a course on anxiety, or you can just get some quick hits that might help you if you're struggling outside and, you've got to go into a meeting and whatever it is. Yeah, so we kind of based them all around need states that men told us that they wanted to work on. So anxiety, stress, sleep, focus, confidence, energy, and happiness. So those 7 things were the things that men said are the things they most wanted to kind of get from the app. So but what we do is we just say, come, just do a few minutes a day. So build it into your routine, like when you're cleaning your teeth or whatever. Not when you're cleaning your teeth, but maybe afterwards or before. And there's a daily mind fuel. It's like a minute long. And there's a daily boost, which is either a quick meditation or breath work, and that's sort of 2 to 4 minutes long. And then if you want to do extra stuff, do. But we're only asking people to be on their phones for 5 minutes a day, but it sets them up in a good place. Men are on their phones anyway. So it's like, okay, well, let's put that technology to good use. I think that's the kind of idea.
Yeah, and consolidating that information into one easily accessible bite-sized place, like you say, rather than trying to cast the net to 100 different things who are telling you 100 different things.
Exactly. Because I get, for me, it was information overload.
Yeah.
It's kind of like...
And if you have, if that happens, you just put your head in the sand and you're back to where you started again, but feeling even more overwhelmed.
100%.
And I was chatting to a friend of mine about this the other day. It's a bit like the summit syndrome, except that you're at the bottom of the mountain, you're feeling completely burnt out and low down. You're like, okay, right, you have a moment of clarity and you're like, well, I need to do all of these things to make myself feel better.
That's right.
This huge unachievable list. And
That's right.
You fail at the first hurdle and then you
100%.
feel shit about yourself again.
So we're like, just give it a few minutes a day. Just do this a few minutes a day, so you feel. And actually, men have been doing that, feel a lot better.
Little and often.
Tell us. Yeah. But it's kind of like, I understand why there's so much information because I'm from a media background. Yeah. You've got to fill the space. Yeah. So if you've got a podcast, you need people on there talking all the time. Yeah. And so therefore, the media demands information, and that's when it can become overload, because you're going to, and everybody's got a story to tell. And all those stories are valid. Yeah. But it's like, okay, sometimes you just need a really simple thing. Okay, I'm just going to do this 5 minutes in the morning, and this will, so for me, I wake up in the morning, I'm stressed, got lots of things going through my head because I'm a tech entrepreneur now, and it's a lot of shit to deal with. But I do my breath work, do a bit of meditation, takes me 15 minutes. And then I'm in a much better place.
Well, it's interesting. You've got so much to sort, because you're in the back end of this, trying to sort of get everything consolidated. But for people on the user side of it, it's extremely helpful having an application that aggregates everything into one place, rather than having to go out and look for it.
Yeah, and that's obviously what we want to create in the long term. What we're trying to do is not just build an app, which we have done, but build a platform and a brand where men feel safe coming to look after their mental health and engage with their mental fitness tools. And then, as I say, when they need more help, we can get them to those places, but they're trusted, clinically backed places, I guess.
It's interesting using the term mental fitness rather than alongside the term of mental health. Was that a decision that was made within Mettle?
Yes. So when we looked at the 3 objections, men generally don't even use kind of the tools in this space. So when a man is, Steve Whittle, who I know you know from Tough to Talk, he talks about it kind of really well. It's not mental health illnesses that get men into trouble. It's life. Yeah, that's kind of, what happens. A relationship fails, or you get into debt or whatever, and you don't talk to anybody, you go into a downward spiral. We asked men, what's stopping you using the things that are already on the market, like Calm, Headspace, talking therapy apps, going to the doctors? And 3 answers came back, 2 female, 2 hippie-ish, nothing wrong with me. Now, we know that stigma is the main barrier to entry to men seeking help. It makes them feel vulnerable. I was one of those guys, so I'm happy to admit that I felt very vulnerable and I couldn't do it. So it's like, okay, well, how do we remove the stigma? So firstly, 2 female, men need to feel that something's built for them. So if they see something that's 2 female, they don't enter the space. Okay, so let's build Mettle. It's just for men. You got Bear Grylls as the co-founder. You see him there. Okay, yeah. And all the science shows gender-specific mental health interventions work better for men. 2 hippie-ish. Well, we co-designed it with Imperial College. It's been verified by the NHS. It's completely science-backed. And the way we talk is complete no nonsense. There's no kind of, I'm a hippie. I love going to sit at the top of a mountain and, meditate for however long, with a bunch of yogis. But most guys just don't want that or need that. And that third thing is there's nothing wrong with me. So there's that perception. It's like, well, I don't have a mental health problem. I might be struggling, but I don't have a mental health issue, And it's like, so we were like, okay, well, how do we approach that? Because, that's important. And so we decided to call what we were doing mental fitness, because mental fitness, I guess, is providing people with the tools that, like a gym for your mind, so they can use them on a daily basis, whether they're in great mental health or poor mental health, but those tools should work for everyone, a bit like lifting weights. Yeah, so they, set you up for the day, but also create resilience to get you through the hard times. And when the hard times come, for a lot of men who've used the app, they've really helped them as well.
Yeah, it's just such a simple shift in language, just to swap one word for another that totally reframes it as I have a health problem, or my brain's just not fit, my head's not fit enough at the moment. And if you're physically unfit, you go for a run and you go do your weights, don't you?
It's not a problem.
There's
no stigma. There's no stigma around it.
Exactly.
So we have, you're totally right, it's a linguistics, that communication thing again. We've got a linguistic problem. So if I say to you, physical health, is that a good thing? Yeah, physical health is a good thing. Yeah. Mental health, people naturally think, well, that's a bad thing. So if you were to sort of, physical health is kind of like, well, I guess if I was to say mental health, what's the next word? You'd say problem,
depression,
issue.
sadness,
It's something negative. And physical health is like, being strong or being fit. It's the whole way we perceive those two couplings are completely different. One's negative, one's positive. And that's a massive problem. And we can't fix linguistics overnight, but we can just change the words.
Yes, exactly. And I think over time it naturally will just shift, because mental health is, it's very a la mode. It's a topic that's very important at the moment, but there is still the stigma around it being like, oh, I'm unhealthy.
That's right.
You're right. It's not like an actual diagnosed, many people do have diagnosed mental health conditions, but for people who don't, it is just life.
That's right.
And we feel like we should be dealing with life because everyone else seems to be, because we're not talking about it, but really a lot of people aren't dealing with life because there's a hell of a lot going on out there.
That's right.
You mentioned Bear Grylls.
Yeah.
How did Bear get involved in Mettle? What's his involvement? How is it? Obviously, as a public figure, it's very useful for spreading the word. But he's a keen advocate for physical health and clearly mental health.
Yeah.
And what's it like working with him? What does he bring to the table?
Yeah. So Bear and I have known each other for over about 12 years, I guess. So we started making shows together. We've had a huge amount of fun jumping out of helicopters into volcanic lakes and all the rest of it, and it's brilliant doing shoots with him, and I've loved it. And then when I came to this, I was kind of like, okay, well, being from TV, I understand the power of brand and celebrity and the right kind of people. And Bear was just so obvious a choice. So right from the start, I remember Bear saying, Bear always talks about resilience, never giving up, and humility, and he always says, it's not what's in here that's going to get you through the tough times, it's what's up here. He's all about mental strength and mental fitness. So he was the perfect, and he's written 2 books on mental fitness as well. So he was obviously the perfect person to approach him. I said, Bear, look, there's this massive problem which you know about. There's a huge hole in the market. We could do something here. Do you want to come on as co-founder? He's like, 100% think it's a great idea. Let's do it. So he's brilliant in that he raises awareness. He's kind of great because, he's a trusted figurehead. He's known by people all over the world. So whether they're in the States or in India or the UK, wherever, Australia, people know him. So we use him in all our ads. He does all the press, and, he's been helpful in kind of, done kind of talks to launch the app at Apple and Google and stuff like that. So he's just a really great active ambassador is what I would say. Somebody who's really passionate about the space anyway, and has been for a very, very long time. So this kind of, that's how he kind of works. He doesn't turn up at the office much. Mainly
out and about having adventures.
Mainly he's out and about, jumping out of planes and having adventures.
Yeah, it's good work if you get it right.
It's very nice. Yeah. But on the weird thing about Bear is that he does it in his spare time. So in his spare time, he does more things that are more dangerous that you can do on TV. Him and his son spend their time kind of jumping out of low altitude kind of helicopters and planes, jumping off bridges and stuff, which is kind of, actually, you can't do that because you can't get insurance for that.
No, exactly. Yeah, it's an interesting. I've got a 5-year-old boy, he's 5.5 now, and he actually was a big part of a bit of a crisis of purpose that I had very recently, where I've been juggling my film production company and the Greater Man Challenge.
Yeah.
And I had this amazing meeting with a growth strategist. We were like, we're going to do all this for the film company. And that was on a Thursday. I woke up on a Friday. My head was over there. My body was over there. Got to 6 p.m. I had therapy. At 7 p.m. after therapy, I just broke down. And he climbed onto my lap. He said, Daddy, why do you have to work so much? And having just moved into a house that we'd bought and not renting anymore, and various other life factors, I thought, well, actually, you've got a really good point. And I said, well, which one shall I do? And he said, you should do the Greater Man Challenge. And I said, why? And he said, he thought about it for about 5 seconds. And he just said, so we can play on boats.
Oh yeah, nice.
And the kids just boil it down, so simply sometimes. And he's been so excited about the prospect of coming on. I mean, I'm not taking him on a transatlantic in 2 years, age 7, but
no.
Hello, Earl, how you doing? But it's a prospect. Maybe, I don't know, maybe we'll be jumping out of airplanes soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Never
say never. It's really important, isn't it? You know, as a man to find time to be with your kids, which is traditionally something that didn't actually happen. You know, a man was not supposed to do that. You were just meant to go to work and, you know, be a father figure and, you know, a bit distant and you know, that's completely changed. And I think COVID massively changed that as well, as for the first time many men, you know, who might have been, you know, even though things have changed, are in that kind of traditional, you know, many of us, you know, have been in the place where, you know, we have kids and our wife will do the majority of the childcare, etc., and then we go back to work. My dog's trying to get in his crate. Stop it, Al. Come on. Don't be a dipshit. What COVID did, I think, was kind of allowed men to spend more time at home for the first time.
Realise what they're missing out.
Realise what they're missing. Oh, yeah, my kids are here and I'm at home around their tea times or whatever.
Because kids will never remember. They don't care at 4 or 5 how much money you're making. They just want you there.
No, exactly.
And that's one of the main catalysts in sort of. I mean, I'm very aware that I will be away at sea.
Yes.
But it'll be for 5 or 6 weeks.
Exactly, and then you're back. And I think that's, you know, but being at work until whatever time at night every day. So COVID transformed my relationship with my son, who's now 12, and I guess in, you know, 5 years ago he was 7. Yeah. You know, so he was 7 years old, and you know, he remembers before and he remembers afterwards, and you know, our relationship has been so much stronger because I've been around.
Yeah, that's it.
Do you know what I mean? It's like,
it's just so important to have that there, because you just don't get it back. I read something the other day that said that by the time your child hits 13, you've spent something like 90% of the time you'll ever spend with them. That's right. Which was just like, she's a little bit heartbreaking. Yeah,
it's so true. It's so true.
But I think when you work on stuff like this that is so purpose driven. You know, I see great relationships out there between parents and grown children now that are incredibly strong because they've spent so much time with their kids as children, but also because their professional purpose, whether it be Mettle or the Greater Man Challenge or Steve Whittle at Tough to Talk, it's purpose driven and it gives back to people. And I think that as as an inspirational legacy is something that it would be, you know, so amazing to look up to.
It's also role models, isn't it? It's like, if we look at why we're in this mess, then arguably it's due to, well, inarguably, it's due to how we are meant to be as men. You know, I don't know the official term, but, you know, the patriarchy or male role models or whatever you want to call it. The reason that men don't communicate, you know, so if we know, we just take a step back, the male mental health crisis is largely due to lack of communication on men because they feel vulnerable. Why? Because they've been taught over millennia that men do this and they're tough and they don't, you know, share their emotions and problems and stuff. And, you know, fair enough. When we were out hunter-gathering, that was the right way to be. You know, we were perhaps, you know, but times have changed and the evolution is quite slow. But the one way we can kind of change is by teaching next generation a different kind of way of being. And so, you know, modelling, especially for young men, is hugely important, isn't it? Having positive male role models are the things that keep kids out of prison for a start and lead them to lead happier, healthier, more successful lives and treat women better, and, you know, all these things are, you know.
Yeah, because I mean, that's a terrifying statistic. Is actually in some countries the largest cause of death in women is domestic violence from men.
How do we change the next generation? By giving them positive role models. But all the stuff around having positive male role models, like the amount of kids who end up in prison because they don't have a positive male role model. I mean, the evidence around that is extraordinary.
Well, they did. Was it Gabor Mate or someone else was in his documentary, The Wisdom of Trauma, or was it? I think was it. Amy, do you know the answer to this? There was was it a female psychologist? I will find out and I'll drop it in the notes below on the episode. But went into prison and they had a circle of about 100 men.
Yeah.
And they said, please, could all the men that experienced physical domestic violence by the hands of their father when they were children step forward? And 100 people stepped forward. You know, it's all to do with childhood adaptation, and they had to toughen up to survive or hide, or you know, attachment versus authenticity. You change who you are in order to gain the attachment and approval of your parents. And if you've got a raging alcoholic father who's physically violent, but you're trying to get their attention and attachment, then you totally change who you are in it. And that's what you think is right until you're shown otherwise, until you have that moment of awakening. We've touched on purpose a little bit. The Greater Man Challenge, you know, our belief is that it's so important for men to come together with each other in physical spaces and do physical things, whilst also adding that sort of added facet of having face-to-face communication with each other. You know, what are your views on that and the importance of community and building community, in-person community?
In-person community, I think, is incredibly valuable. I do think that actually Zoom can do a pretty good job as well now. Like, you know, we've been running men's groups, which we just do entirely by Zoom, and the bonds we've formed on there have been incredible and really helped the guys. So I know that it can be done, but it's still face to face. You know, it's offline, if you know what I mean. But I think that places like Andy's Man Club and stuff, those men's groups that are growing and growing and growing, prove how important men being in community with each other really is. And as I say, it's rules of engagement. So it's kind of like, if you create a space where men feel safe communicating, then they'll support each other. You look at kind of things like the men's sheds movement in Australia, which is kind of maybe for slightly older guys, but they've created spaces which are just sheds, and they come together, guys come together who don't know each other, who might be a bit lonely, and work together on physical projects, you know, building stuff. And actually that loneliness thing, so longevity is a big word in health tech and all the rest of it at the moment. Everyone's talking about longevity, you know, how do I live longer? And it's like, you know, okay, well, if I, you know, get a Whoop strap and reduce my resting heart rate by 1 BPM, I'm going to be living however many years longer. And then I spend a lot of time in Spain, and I look around Spain and nobody's doing that. And they're all sitting in the bar and, you know, hanging out with their mates and getting drunk and having massive long lunches and terrible sleeping hours. And yet they're now, I think, the longest lived nation on earth. And it's like, well, wait a minute. Why is that? It's because they value community and communication and family and friendship above all else. That's the most important things. And that's making them live longer than everyone else. The single science now shows that the single most important thing as a marker of your longevity is community. It's connection. There's, you know, we're moving to a world where we've got AI, and that will soon become AI informed robots doing a lot of physical stuff. So we know that the knowledge economy is under attack, if you like, from AI, but it's also going to happen in the kind of physical world as well. But for example, they've started to use robot carers in some situations, which can do the job and look after people, but they're dying much younger because that human connection isn't there. And actually there's chemicals that are released, you know, that through our, you know, I can't remember what they are.
Like oxytocin.
Oxytocin, all that sort of stuff, through human connection. And when it isn't there, people just don't live as long. So the single best thing you can do for your longevity is to make sure you
living in community.
You're living in community. So, you know, that's number one, I would say.
Have you watched Live to 100, Secrets of the Blue Zones on Netflix?
Yes, that's right.
It's great.
It's brilliant.
Six-part series.
And they're all living so long, mainly, I'd say, because that. And they live on hills. So I always make sure I live on
topography,
a hill. So,
I noticed, it's an interesting, and another really interesting thing from that, specific to our conversation, is the fact that actually men do not live less than women generally. Like, from a biological perspective, it is all about how we live our lives in terms of community, in terms of talking, in terms of sharing, in terms of the physicality of a lot of the jobs that we do, etc. So actually, that was a really interesting thing that I took away from that. I think we're probably at the end of this discussion now, Neil. Thank you very much.
Really enjoyed it. Thanks, Charles,
for joining us today.
I could sit here all day and chew the cud. There's so much to talk about.
So yeah, if you've liked the video, please like it. If you want to subscribe, do so. You want to find out more about the Greater Man Challenge, please head to thegreatermanchallenge.org. And if you want to download the app Mettle that Neil is a part of, that beautiful thing there.
Go to the App Store or the Google Play Store.
There you go. Download it there. Thanks very much. We'll see you in the next one.